Two ways I can tell a story I've never told before.
CEO of the Buff Bunny collection, everyone's favorite fitness influencer, Buff Bunny herself, Heidi Somers.
If you would have told me, like that 16-year-old, like, hey, you're gonna have a multi-million-dollar business, I would have been like, there's absolutely no way. Broke college student, getting served a $100,000 lawsuit. I was all over the place. I knew I wanted to do something big. I just didn't really know what I wanted to do yet.
What was the timeline from when you were 40 pounds overweight to actually competing in the bodybuilding?
The challenge of it interested me, especially being shy and homeschooled. My heart is closed off right now. I am not interested. I'm gonna focus on me. He was like, why don't you stay an extra day and I'll take you on a date? And I was like, it's one date. That doesn't mean that anything's gonna happen from it.
Really married.
As an entrepreneur, dating another entrepreneur is great. It's like you understand the hustle, like you get each other. I think it's so sweet when people are like, oh, couple goals. I'm like,
Hey guys, welcome to this very special episode of the Passionate Few podcast. It's your host, Omar, and today we have a very special episode as we sit down with none other than the CEO of the Buff Bunny collection, everyone's favorite fitness influencer, and one of the most inspiring entrepreneurs for people around the world, especially women, none other than Miss Buff Bunny herself, Heidi Somers. Thanks so much for being on the show today, Heidi.
thank you so much, Omar. Thanks for having me. What an intro.
Yes, absolutely, been preparing. And thank you for coming out here. I know we're in California. Randall Pitch, a mutual friend of ours from Live Fit, shout out Randall, connected us, so thank you so much.
Love Randall. I'm actually wearing one of his shirts mixed with Buff Bunny collection, so
Hell yeah.
gotta represent.
Absolutely. So let's get right into your story. A lot of people might know the amazing things you built on social media. You've obviously built Buff Bunny Collection, which is a massive brand that's just been exploding in the fitness space. But you've also accumulated millions of followers, and everybody knows who the Buff Bunny, Heidi is online. But take me back. Before you became, this big-time social media entrepreneur, you grew up in Alaska, right? And I know you were homeschooled. So take us back to the very beginning. What was your childhood like, and where did the Buff Bunny story begin for you?
Where did it begin? All right. Well, I think everything kind of began, I would say, in North Pole, Alaska. That's where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And most of my family still lives there. I was born and raised there. My parents had 6 kids. We really lived in a remote area. Homeschooling in general is a very big thing in Alaska just because it's very cold. I've been in cold weather as cold as, 70 below zero, I think it was, in high school at one point. So when it's that cold, you really don't want to leave the house.
Right.
The bus stop is not fun when it's that cold. So homeschooling is very popular.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I didn't love being homeschooled. I feel like I wanted to socialize and just kind of get out there a little bit. So when I was 16, I went to public school, and the movie Mean Girls was literally my life. So, eating lunch in the bathroom, I think her name was Katie. Mm-hmm. In the movie, I literally did that on my first day because I remember going out and seeing everyone. I was so overwhelmed.
Yeah. Did you like push to go there? Like, did you rebel with your parents a little bit? Like, I don't want to be home. I want to be independent, or what was it?
Yes. Yeah. My parents loved having everyone like kind of close together, but for me, I knew I wanted to go to college eventually. And so I felt like getting me to high school would kind of be that great introductory before going to college. But it was definitely very overwhelming. I think just everything felt very new to me. And so I remember going in my first day, was it the counselor that they give you? They were like, okay, this is your counselor. I remember being like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. I was just homeschooled. And they were like, no, everyone gets a counselor. And then, hearing the bells ringing, I feel like it was just very overwhelming. But I definitely got the hang of it. And
Were you the only sibling that kind of pushed for it?
I was. Yeah. I think I was the first one to go to public school. And then the younger two eventually went to private school and then turned into going into public school, if I'm not mistaken. But I was definitely the one that really pushed for it. So the 3 older siblings, they were homeschooled their whole lives, graduated, homeschool prom, the whole thing. But I was like, I'd rather not.
Yeah.
So I feel like it did really help me get used to going to college for sure.
And then once you did that, like, was it in high school where you start thinking like, man, I want to do big things. Like, I want to get out of Alaska. Is it, because later, fast forward, you'd build this multi-million-dollar company. But at that time, the rebel in you, was it trying to like just get out of the mold and do something new? Or like, what was the inner dialogue for you at that time that was driving you?
That's a great question. I think at that point, I was 16 years old. I knew I wanted to go to college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do back then. I think I had a few different ideas. One was being a doctor. Another one, I want to be an archaeologist. I think at one point I was all over the place, you know, as most 16-year-olds are. But I think one thing in particular is like I really wanted to go to college. I really wanted to be the best version of myself that I could be. Like I knew I wanted to do something big. I just didn't really know what I wanted to do yet. But if you would have told me like that 16-year-old, like, hey, you're going to have a multi-million-dollar business, I would have been like, there's absolutely no way, especially being so shy and homeschooled. And I feel like I was kind of socially awkward back then as well, just being, you know, home with your siblings and your family most of the time.
Was it a more conservative culture as well?
Definitely. I would say, you know, I was raised very religious. I didn't wear pants, I think, until I was like 14. So very, very different from how my life is now, for sure.
So you would have never imagined like having like a full brand with short shorts and athleisure.
Oh, God, absolutely not. Especially since I wasn't really, you know, growing up very conservative. You know, I didn't wear pants till I was 14. So it's funny that I actually make leggings for a living now. For sure. But at the same time, like, I love my upbringing. I wouldn't change it for anything. I mean, I'm so close with my family, and I feel like because I learned things a lot later in life, not that it was a disadvantage, but I guess it was just very eye-opening, and it made me just appreciate things so much more.
Not take them for granted.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt like I was a lot more mature at a younger age than most people. I think when I did go to public school, I remember just a lot of other things. I'm like, oh, you should absolutely not do that. Whereas other kids would be doing crazy things. I'm like, no, let me be the responsible one. Just because I think I was just, I learned things a lot younger than other people.
Were you one of the older siblings or one of the younger siblings, or in the middle from all your 6 siblings?
Number 4. I was number 4. Yeah.
So you're pretty like middle to the bottom there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then at what point do you go, okay, I want something more? Because I know you found yourself, like 40 pounds overweight at one point. Is this kind of once you get to college, or where does this sort of start to shift for you or take effect?
So I think when everything shifted, you know, I was in high school, then I went to college. And at the time I was studying biology pre-med. I knew that I eventually wanted to go to med school. So I was looking at a few places in the States, or the lower 48, as we call it in Alaska. And
the lower 48.
The lower 48, yes. And I looked at San Antonio. They had the UT Health Science Center, and I knew that that was a college that was not easy to get into by any means, but I forget why I picked that one. I mean, there's a lot of different med schools that you can apply to, and I knew that I wouldn't. It'd be tricky. It's tricky to apply and get into any of them, but I went to University of Alaska, transferred to San Antonio, and I was working like 4 jobs, I think, just to save up to go to the lower 48 because it's expensive. And there was at one point when, oh gosh, what was it? I was 19. I think I was in school for like a year and a half. I mean, there was one semester I was cheated on, got laid off from work, crashed my car, and I was like, I feel like this is the universe just telling me to get out. So I bought a one-way ticket, and I think I gave myself about 4 months. And I was like, all right, I'm going to San Antonio. I'm just going to
F it.
Yeah, just screw everything. Just go to San Antonio and just figure it out. My family wasn't the most excited about it. I remember my dad was like, don't talk to any strangers. I was like, Dad, literally everyone is a stranger there. I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And I figured it out. And I guess part of me was like, I just want to see how strong I am and see if I'm capable of making this big leap and figuring it out, if you will.
Was part of it kind of to reinvent yourself after the pain of that breakup? Or, you know, they often say there's 2 things that shift people, inspiration or desperation. And sometimes it's a combination of the 2. That like after a low, I know for me that was the case, like after a low, that's when you kind of like will take actions that you wouldn't normally take because you want to just like pattern interrupt your life. You know, what was it for you that was a catalyst to just say F it? Was it just like all those at once, or what was it for you?
Yeah, I would say that's a good way to put it. I feel like desperation. I feel like going to the lower 48 was something that I always wanted to do, but I just never took that leap. And I think it was like 3 to 4 weeks when all of those things happened. I think I was just sitting in my room. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna book it right now. But I gave myself 4 months, so I wasn't
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna go tomorrow.
Just
So I
in
gave
one way.
myself 4 months. It was a one-way.
Did you have cash or did you have like reserves to?
I've always kind of saved money and put things away, and
Yeah.
part of it's like, oh, I, started working when I was technically, I think it was like 10 years old. I went to do the paper route. I did that for a little bit. Technically, it was my very first job.
Yeah.
But as soon as I turned 16, I started working, and I'd always put money away.
What job did you have?
Oh gosh, let's see.
Hey guys, quick question. Have you been enjoying this video, but you're thinking to yourself, man, I love this content, but I want to learn how to grow my brand or my business? Well, if your answer is yes, you're not alone. In fact, millions of entrepreneurs deal with this exact same issue. And it's something that I've learned the answer to from interviewing 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs around the world. And this philosophy that solves all that is a concept called who, not how. Now, the who, not how philosophy states that anytime you're stuck on the hows to get to the next level in your life, your brand, or your business, that there's always a who to help you get there. And it's for this exact reason that I'm super excited to announce that I've officially launched our brand new Passionate Few community to help you do exactly that. And yes, it's 100% free. Join me and the thousands of other entrepreneurs that can help you make your life, your business, and your dreams a reality. With no further ado, let's get back to the video.
To save up for college, I worked 4 jobs. One was a coffee cart, so I was a barista, and that was like from 4:30 in the morning until 8:30. Then I worked from like 9 or 10 to 2 as a receptionist. Then I worked from 2 to usually like 8, 10 p.m. depending on the day as a bobcat driver for a dirt company
No way.
that installed septic systems. Yeah.
And how old were you at that time?
Oh gosh, I was 19, I think.
And that's not
It was good money. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. But it's not common in Alaska, right, for people to be doing that. So you were clearly driven by something that like most people around you weren't, right? Especially women your age at that time.
Actually, I don't know. My sister worked for a dirt company too.
Runs in the family.
Yeah, I guess it runs in the family. And I think it's mainly just an Alaskan thing. Obviously, gravel pits are really popular and there's a lot of new builds going on. So I think it was just down the street they were hiring. And I was like, cool, I can learn how to drive a Bobcat.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And fitness at this point, is it part of your life? Or
Oh, God, no. Like, not at all. I actually
Really?
used to hate working out, was not interested in it. Whenever I went to public school, they put me in PE and they were like, well, you can do weightlifting or is it cardio running something? I was like, no running for me. And I was like, weightlifting sounds awful, but I'll try that. And my teacher, oh my gosh, what was his name? Mr. McIntosh. He laughs about it now. He's like,
Shout out, Mr. McIntosh.
shout out to Mr. McIntosh. He used to not remember if I was in that class or not because I would skip all the time. I'd be like, weightlifting? Absolutely not. So I would skip.
So you were a rebel at this time, yeah.
I wasn't much of a rebel, but I did like to. But I was very strategic about the classes I would skip. I was on the honor roll, mainly A's, and they're like, "How are you doing this? But you're skipping all these classes." I was like, "I'm skipping the ones I don't need to go to." Sorry, Mom, if you're finding out this right now. But and I would skip PE a lot. Yeah, weightlifting was not enjoyable for me.
So when does fitness come into play? Or when did the weight gain come into play?
So fitness happened whenever I did buy my one-way ticket to Texas, and the food there, phenomenal. Way better than Taco Bell, McDonald's that we had in North Pole.
Yeah.
So I remember I started eating, just trying everything. So I was like,
Barbecue, yeah.
oh my gosh, the barbecue. The barbecue, Sonic. I lived right next to a Sonic. That was usually my go-to. Jack in the Box. I mean, you name it. I tried everything.
Wow.
And I think a combination of that and just being in college, like the freshman 15 turned into like the freshman like 30 or 40.
What was your guilty pleasure food at that time?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. I worked at a hookah lounge and I remember they had jibbin. It was fried bread with cheese and they had garlic sauce that you dip in. And I would get that all the time. And then boba tea. I would get a boba tea with it.
Oh yeah, the boba milk tea or the Thai tea.
Oh my, yes. That was my kryptonite. So I would usually go for that, and I feel like the weight gain just happened very quickly.
Yeah, it was easy after that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty easy.
And then what's your first time going into the gym, or was it just one day where you said, you know what, I need to change my life and start getting into fitness, or like what was the gradual step-by-step process where you made that shift?
Oh gosh. So I think So I remember gaining quite a bit of weight. I didn't really realize it because obviously you see yourself in the mirror every day, and I wore
Happens, little by
yeah,
little. Yeah.
sweats and a hoodie, and usually and at work, you know, I worked at a hookah lounge. It was just a t-shirt, you know, so it's not like I noticed that my clothes were getting tighter. Until I remember I went shopping, and remember I was at Hollister. I was at Hollister.
I remember that Hollister, Abercrombie.
The Hollister days.
Yeah.
And I think I was buying, was it new shorts? And I remember I had to go up quite a few sizes. And I was like, oh. And I think part of it was, you know, there's nothing wrong with having to go up a size or two. But I think it was a combination of the sizes and also how I felt. Because, you know, working 4 jobs in Alaska, you know, I had energy like that, you know, because I was eating a lot of home cooked meals, let's say. And
not a lot of Sonic,
we didn't have Sonic, although we have Sonic now, which is very nice. But at the time, you know, working 4 jobs, eating mainly at home, it's like you had a lot more energy to get through those days. Now going to college and eating a lot of like processed foods, a lot of just overall, it was a lot of junk food, a lot of junk food. It was like my energy. I feel like I had a hard time keeping up. Just overall, I felt tired every day. Obviously the sizes were one thing, low energy.
Yeah, mood, confidence.
It was just like a whole combination of things. I just didn't feel like me.
And how old were you at this time?
Let's see, I was probably 21.
Dang, so you didn't really get into fitness until your 20s.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I would say I was 20. Yeah, but about 21 is when I kind of made that switch. And I remember, you know, after Hollister, you know, I bought my shorts that fit me, and I was like, okay. And I remember going home and thinking like, man, I really need to start working out.
Yeah.
And I had a guy roommate at that time, and, you know, he was giving me advice, and I was like, man, I had a hard time, you know, obviously wanting to follow that advice, because I was like, you're pretty jacked. Yeah. I don't want to get bulky, and I don't want to do this. And so,
which is funny because then you became the Buff Bunny.
Yes, exactly. I was like, oh, I don't want to get too jacked. I don't want too much muscle. But I guess, you know, hearing his advice, you know, obviously I didn't take a lot of the advice. I remember going into the gym and I just felt very overwhelmed. I remember walking in there and I was just like, man.
Intimidated.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know where to start. I don't know what I'm doing. There wasn't a lot of influencers. Really, there was barely any back in the day. I think there was like Jillian Michaels. Although she looked great, you know, good old Jillian, but she didn't really share that much content on her socials, if anything at all. She had books and DVDs.
Yeah, and infomercials. Yeah.
Yes, and so
What year is this, give or take?
Oh gosh, this was like 12 years ago, I think. Okay. This was a while ago. So yeah, there was influencing back then, fitness influencing anyway. It wasn't very popular. It wasn't very common. So, you know, I would Google things, and that's about it. So I remember I ended up going to CrossFit, and that really what kind of helped me feel more confident, because it was not only the workouts, but it was the community aspect of it.
It was like group-led classes that kind of baby stepped you through what you were doing, the motions, the form. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I felt much more confident in that sense, because you had a community that was really cheering you on, you know, and they didn't judge you, versus kind of going to the gym. Not that you feel judged, but you feel like everyone's eyes are on you. You're like, oh, are people watching me? Are they looking at me? Are they making fun of me? Like, you just feel like...
Even though everybody's thinking about themselves, that no one's...
100%. Yeah, they're all like working on their own goals. And now being at this point in my life, I'm like, man, everyone's just at the gym. They're working on themselves. Like, they're not looking at you. They're looking at themselves. And, but back then, you know, you just feel like everyone's eyes are on you. But I think CrossFit, for me, I loved it because everyone... If their eyes were on you, they were cheering you on, and I loved that. You know, they're like, "Come on, you can do it. Do another burpee. Do another this and that." And so I loved that. But over time, I feel like I still love CrossFit, and like I'll still pop in every once in a while. But I think for me, I wanted a little bit more control, if that makes sense. Because with CrossFit, it's great, but you kind of go and they'll tell you what workout you're gonna do. For me, I was like, all right. Sometimes like maybe I want to focus a little bit more on my legs. I want to build my shoulders. I want to build my back. So then I got into, I guess, bikini bodybuilding.
And so what's that transition like? Like you were doing it for a year and then you got competitive about it, wanting to do the bikini thing, or like is this a couple years? And the reason I ask is because I know there's a lot of men or women around the world who might be at that sort of place where you're at, where they're kind of like, they know they want to make a shift. Maybe they don't like fitness. They're trying to find a groove. So what advice would you have for people who are on the sort of precipice of wanting to get into fitness, but they're intimidated and kind of want to get the ball rolling there, given that experience?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, everyone's different. It's hard. I would say what helped me at that point was two things. The first one was going to CrossFit, which is more community based. Doesn't mean you have to do CrossFit. That's something where you can have that community. So group classes, also like kind of creating like your own little class of friends. And I think that was the other thing that I did is I started with CrossFit. Yeah.
Your own
Mean
little
girls,
crew.
but nice girls.
Yeah.
So CrossFit was great because the community aspect, and I kind of built that transitioning into bikini bodybuilding. I was kind of asking friends, I'm like, hey, would you guys want to do a prep together? So my very first prep for bikini bodybuilding, it started out with 6 of us girls, and it kind of dwindled down to just like 2 of us left that ended up doing the competition together.
What was the timeline from when you were 40 pounds overweight to actually competing in the bodybuilding, or I'm sorry, in the bikini?
In
contest?
Bikini, let's see, I did 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I think it was 25 when I did my first bikini show.
So you were in fitness for a couple years then?
Yeah, I was in fitness for a few years. I think between doing my own workouts and then doing CrossFit, I kind of built this good foundation. And then I think, gosh, over time with CrossFit and then switching to bikini, I think there's a few reasons. I wanted a different challenge. I love to challenge myself.
I can tell.
Yeah, I was like, I love a good challenge.
Yeah.
And with bikini bodybuilding, you know, I saw a few people doing it. It was kind of becoming that popular sport. And I would look at it and be like, man, I wonder if I could do something like that. I wonder if I would do well at it. And another thing is, you know, I'd see these girls with these 6-packs, and I was like, man, I've never had a 6-pack.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool if I could get that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few reasons that I wanted to at least try.
So you had to put down the Sonic.
I did have to.
Yes.
It was heartbreaking too.
Yes.
So those cream slushes, like the watermelon ones, man,
Yeah.
they hit different.
So did you start like dieting like during the fitness process, or did it like once you got competitive? Like, well, I guess my question is like, at what point did you start transitioning from solely focusing on working out to it affecting the diet? Is it once you started seeing results, or like when did you start focusing on diet as a part of the fitness routine, I guess?
That's a good question. I think with CrossFit, let's see, in college, because I was biology pre-med, I didn't graduate, so classes away. But in college, I know everyone's like, you need to go back. I'm like, absolutely not.
New challenge. Yeah.
New challenge, not that one. That's not a good challenge.
Yeah.
But I did take classes like anatomy and physiology, science of nutrition. So I feel like I learned a lot during that process about diet, what's good for you, what isn't good for you, all the things. And gosh, and when I was doing CrossFit, you know, everyone was eating the paleo diet. And I did it for a while, and I enjoyed it. But there definitely wasn't any type of tracking your macros and hitting goals. It was more of like, this is what you should eat. And that was kind of it. And I enjoyed the paleo diet. So I was like, cool. I can eat whatever meat I want. I love this. This is great.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a whole lot of restrictions, which I really enjoyed, especially being in college. And I definitely saw my body change quite a bit for the better. Like, obviously, I lost quite a bit of weight. I was starting to see some muscle. I was like, okay, this is great. But again, with this bikini bodybuilding, it was a whole other sport, completely different. And first of all, the challenge of it interested me. The challenge of being able to do a completely different sport, try to get a 6-pack, and then the nutrition part of it was very different. So
how did you do in the contest?
I ended up doing well. I got 5th place in my first one.
Nice.
And then I went back, so I was like, let me try this again. And I got first in oval and then first again.
Wow.
But my first competition, I didn't think I was going to place at all.
Were you nervous?
Oh my gosh, I blacked out on stage. I don't remember. Like walking out there, I think I was terrified. I'm actually not the best public speaker, and I'm not good at being in front of big crowds. And so I don't really remember like my posing routine or anything, but I had practiced so much that when I went out there, I somewhat did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I remember I didn't practice a call out. So when they call you out, you have like your first call out. So I was standing there and they call my name and I'm like, or they call my number and I was like, shit. Oh, can I say that on here?
Yeah, yeah. You're good. Shit.
Okay, shit. So I remember they called my number and I was like, shit, I did not practice this. So I go out there and I'm doing the posing routine. I have it all on my YouTube. I don't want to watch it. Oh, God.
We'll link it down below.
Yeah, link it down below. But the whole time I'm looking at the girl next to me and I'm just copying her movements, the quarter turn or half turn, turn to the left. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And the whole time I look like such a lost puppy, but I love looking at that footage at the same time because you're like, oh, you're such a baby. Like you were learning so much. And it's not that I didn't have the confidence in myself to think that I would get first call outs. It's just, I didn't know anything about the sport. And a lot of people told me, hey, this is your first time doing this. Don't expect to get like a placing. And I was like, cool. All right. Well, I'm just going to go into this as a challenge for myself and see if I'll get a 6-pack. And I got my 6-pack. So that was like my trophy,
How did it affect your confidence, your mindset?
Getting the placing or just kind of overall?
Going through the process of like getting into the discipline of it. Because I'm sure that was the bigger takeaway than the contest, right?
Yes.
Who you became as a person.
Exactly. Honestly, I have no idea where my trophies are. I don't even think I've kept them. I have no idea. I'll have to go look in the attic. So,
Hey guys, we'll get right back to this video in a sec. But first, I have a quick question for you. Given that the e-commerce industry is growing by the trillions year over year, have you ever dreamed of running your own e-commerce business like many of the guests we've interviewed on the show? But maybe you felt overwhelmed about where to begin? Lucky for you, today's sponsor, Zendrop, solves this exact problem. You see, with Zendrop, you simply select high-quality products, add them to your store, and they handle shipping and fulfillment while you make the profit. No more guessing games on product sourcing or dealing with inventory hassles. Zendrop's platform is designed with you in mind, making it incredibly simple to launch and scale your dropshipping business in a one-stop shop. Plus, they're offering an exclusive deal. Sign up today through our link below and their team will personally craft your very own store to kickstart your e-commerce journey. They even have weekly coaching calls to answer all of your questions and help you get up and running in no time. It's truly more than just a platform. It's your e-commerce partner waiting to join you on the path to success. So why wait? It only takes 5 minutes or less to sign up. Simply hit pause, head over to zendrop.com/passion, and let's turn your passion for e-commerce into a thriving online business today. Thank you to Zendrop for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the show.
For me, I think the biggest trophy or your biggest takeaway from doing a competition is what you learn throughout that journey and that process. Because the trophy, I mean, at the end of the day, there's just people judging you on what your body looks like compared to others. Some people are like, it's a vain sport. But I still think, like, would I do another one? Possibly, most likely not. But I love the sport because it's putting yourself out there after all the hard work that you put in. And for me, like, I learned some of the most amazing things during that process that have helped me with business, that has helped me in relationships and team building and so many different aspects. I think a few things that I learned was patience. And when people are, that might sound corny. People are like, oh, you learn patience, this and that. But it's like you really have to be patient with yourself when you're waking up every single day and you're following a routine while juggling multiple jobs and you're being in school and you're trying to balance this new sport that's really like a full-time job with your everyday things.
Yeah.
So patience would definitely be another one, or would be the main one. And then there's so many different things I learned, but another one would be boundaries. Boundaries is a good one.
Like saying no, saying yes.
Saying no to others and saying yes to yourself. And I know that's something that a lot of people struggle with, like men and women, is like creating those boundaries. And I think that's really where I learned how to create boundaries is, you have to say no. Otherwise it's like, do you really want to do this competition?
Yeah, 6-pack.
Really? 6-pack? No Sonic? Like, do you really want to walk that journey and do that? Or do you want to go out with your friends? And so I think it's creating those boundaries and like making sure in the beginning before you start that prep. And I'm very much like a good competitive, I like to challenge myself and I love a good competition, a healthy competition. And
Very cool.
before starting that prep, I was like, okay, I'm either in it or I'm not. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to give it my all and like really practice those boundaries.
And then you go do the first contest, you get 5th place, and then you come back, you get first twice, right?
Yes.
And then, so of course, now your ego's like, I got this, right? What's the next challenge?
I would say yes and no. I think with the competition, I mean, I got 5th place, and when I did it again, it really wasn't to win first place. I was like, if I win first place, great.
That's what everybody who wins first place says.
Yeah. But at the same
winning,
time, I was like,
yeah.
all right, I got my 6-pack. But I think for me, it was just trying to get better for myself in the sense of, okay, I learned all these things during the competition. But I was like, I knew I could have done better. I knew, I think there was just like a few things that I wanted to build up. I was like, okay, I want to build up my legs. I want to build up my shoulders. I think that I could have, done a little bit more cardio. I want a different sparkly bikini. Let's try a blue one this time. So,
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the journey.
And it was after this that you start getting sponsors and start making a little bit of, money from sponsors, or how did that transition? Because that wasn't part of the goal initially, right?
No, it wasn't. No, absolutely not. I think when I started social media, and this is something that I feel like some people do it very well and then some people don't. I think when I started social media, it wasn't to really be an influencer or anything like that, especially since it was so new back then.
Right.
I was
no
really
reference. Yeah.
Yeah, I was more so sharing tips and tricks that I wish I would have known. I wish I would have had someone to listen to when I first started, because when I was trying to lose the weight, there wasn't a lot of people on social media that were giving tips and tricks and everything. And, I had a guy roommate, which was great, but it's different when it comes from a woman, like woman to woman.
Yeah.
And so with me starting social media, it's like I was just trying to share things that I wish I would have known or someone would have told me, like woman to woman. And I think just because I was just sharing what I learned, I was like, guys, I'm not an expert in this, but these are the things I'm learning. This is the things that I want to share with you. And I think because of that, women just started following my social media, and I was like, oh, and I remember kind of being a little bit nervous, like as it was, growing, because I was like, why are these people following me?
Yeah. Was
I'm
it a little bit
literally
of
just
imposter
sharing my
syndrome?
snacks.
Was it like a little bit of imposter syndrome because you were learning as you were going, sharing this stuff, like initially? Like, did you feel like, oh my God, I don't fully know the stuff. Like, I kind of think I know what I'm doing, or like, where was your confidence at with the stuff you were sharing?
That's a good question. I don't think I really had imposter syndrome until the following grew quite a bit. I would say after a few years, because I think in the beginning it was more for fun. I was still going to school and I was working and I was trying to build out my resume to one day go to med school. So I wasn't, not that I wasn't taking it seriously, but I was more so doing it for fun. I was like, hey guys, I learned this today. I learned that. I love this healthy recipe that I learned. And oh, I did this killer workout. So I was just really just sharing things just very authentically myself. I wasn't trying to be someone I wasn't. I was just, just sharing things that I learned. And, as I was getting these sponsorships and everything, and I was getting offers, and I was
they were
like,
just coming to you, the sponsors?
yeah, I wasn't seeking them or anything. And at first I was like, man, this seems like a little, I don't know, this is like too good to be true. I was like, you want to pay me to take your supplements? Like, what? That's wild to me. Or like, pay me to wear your clothes? I wear them already. So it was just very strange to me. But I was so focused in school. I mean, I loved school and I was good at it. I had a very high GPA. I was in the science club. I was working as a surgical assistant for a periodontist to really build out this resume for med school. So I was like 150% in there. So when I came to that fork in the road, and I was like, do I finish school or do I take this unknown path? It was really hard for me because it was two things I genuinely loved so much. And it's like, how do you choose one?
And I know at this time too, that you said sometimes patients would come in and while they were going under anesthesia or something, they'd be like, are you Buff Bunny?
Oh yeah.
Something like that. Like what was that like? Or can you talk a little bit about that?
It was interesting just because I don't know. I guess when you're building your social media and when you have a social media, you almost feel like, not that it's fake, but you're like, oh, I'm never gonna actually like meet people that follow me.
Yeah, like you're just doing it into this like portal.
Yeah,
But then you
that's what
forget
it
that it's
feels like.
interactive with the real world. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just kind of doing it for fun, and you're like, oh, like I have 100,000 followers, but you don't really think like you put 100,000 people in a room. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But whenever you're just doing it for fun, I guess, I don't know, I guess not that you don't take it seriously, but you just don't realize the amount of impact you can have on other people. And you don't realize like, oh, I can actually meet someone that's just walking into your work. It's wild.
And so what would happen? Like,
so there was a couple times there'd be a patient, they were like, you look familiar. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, where from? I would just kind of like try to revert it, because I was kind of shy too.
yeah.
And they're like, man, you look like this girl I follow on Instagram. And I was like, who? And I'd be like, oh, yeah, she looks cool. Just trying to revert the conversation.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't want to make a big deal at work or anything. I didn't tell my coworkers anything or the doctor. But then eventually they found out and they were really supportive. They're like, wait, what? So when I ended up quitting, I was like, they're like, you're welcome here anytime if you want to come back. It's like, thanks, guys. So very supportive, but they're like, now we understand. You got to go do your thing.
And where did the Buff Bunny name come from?
So the Buff Bunny name came in like back in the day. I was like, back in the day. Everyone on Instagram kind of had some fun names. It wasn't people's full names. People would put, built and tough. Like they would just put whatever names kind of resonated with them. I put Buff Bunny because I love the sense of combining two different things that I was very passionate into one. So Buff was kind of like this one side of me where I love just throwing weights around the gym and kind of that alter ego where it's like
Tough girl. Yeah.
tough girl. Yeah, I guess that tough girl throwing weights around, getting sweaty in the gym. I love a good warehouse gym too. And then Bunny is kind of like this soft, feminine, intelligent animal side. So it was kind of combining two things in one where you wouldn't think to put two of these words into one.
So the magic of the juxtaposition of the two in one. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of where the name started. And then everyone kind of started changing their names on Instagram to like their actual names. But I just never did. I don't know. I've always loved that name.
Yeah, that's cool. And then at this point, you start making money with sponsors, right? Can you share a little bit about how much you were making at that time and when you decided to kind of go full in on your dreams, so to speak, and leave the job?
Yes. Let's see. I could take this two ways. I could tell a story I've never told before.
Let's do it. Exclusive.
Yeah? Okay.
Let's do it.
It's some tea.
Let's do it.
It involves a lawsuit.
Let's do it. The exclusive.
Okay. All right. So my very first taste of sponsorships, and this is actually why I help a lot of my girls on my team with Buff Bunny Collection. I have, I think 130 influencers that we work with directly right now. And whenever they're working with a new sponsorship, a new contract, a lot of times, they're new to the influencing world. And I tell them like, let me look over your contract for you. It's like, I'm not a lawyer, but like, you can't afford a lawyer. I got you. Let me look it over. I'll let you know if it's a good deal or not. And I'll tell you what to look out for. And that's because my very first sponsorship was a supplement company. It was, it was like in 2014. And I was approached by a company, great supplements. I was like, great, love your products. And they were like, okay, we want you to sign this contract. And I was like, okay, cool. It's like, I can't afford a lawyer. I never signed a contract. And they, over time, they had sold the company to a new owner. I didn't particularly like the owner. I heard a few things that were just inappropriate. And I was like, I don't know, I just don't have a good vibe about this. So I was like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and go my separate ways. Thank you so much for everything. Wish you the best. And they were like, no, you're in a contract with us. And I was like, actually, I'm not. No, I didn't sign the contract. And they're like, it's a verbal agreement. So they bring in this scary lawyer and they were like, you need to, work with us. And of course I was like, I don't know. The owner would just say inappropriate things about women and just like the things that, about the company. I don't know. again, just got a bad feeling. So they were like, well, you're going to come to Arnold with us. And I was like, no, I'm not going to work with you guys anymore. And they were really just kind of like bullying me, kind of cornering me. And again, like I just started influencing and I was still in college and everything.
So it's intimidating. There's lawyers. You don't know what you're doing. You're first,
like, what you would call it, like a broke college student, just try to figure life out still.
100%.
Now they tried to sue me for $100,000, and they did the whole, gosh, when they serve you papers and everything.
Yeah.
Guy knocking on my door. I was like,
are you Heidi Somers? You're like, yes. They give you the thing, and you're just like,
the papers. And I was like, what? And so they tried suing me for $100,000. I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm worth $100,000. And because I didn't go to the Arnold with them, and it was like this big thing, and I was honestly really scared because it's this, big scary lawyer saying, we're suing you for $100,000. So I get a lawyer, and he was like, I'm gonna be honest, this is going to be expensive. And I know you're a broke college student, basically. And he's like, I'm going to do what I can. But so we get on a group call, and these lawyers are basically saying, hey, if you come work with us, you come back to this company and work with us, then we'll drop everything. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. And even my lawyer at the time was like,
yeah, it's not a bad deal.
It's not a bad deal. But I was like, I don't care if I have to spend the next 20 years paying this debt off. I won't work with a company or this new owner if I
it's against your values.
Yeah, I was like, and that was scary for someone that is in college and that's getting dealt this big lawsuit.
And how old are you at this time?
I was 23, maybe 22, 23, maybe 24. I don't remember. I'll have to dig up the old contracts.
Yeah.
And what did I do? I remember. I was like, I pulled a Kim K. I pulled a Kim K. I was like, all right, can't afford my lawyer. I'm just going to go ahead and see what I can find about this company. So I started doing my own research and Googling about this new owner and interviewing some previous employees. And I kind of built my own case and I presented it to them.
No way.
Yeah.
Just you on your own.
On my own. I presented it to them and I was like, Exhibit A, B, C, you guys owe me money. There was no a verbal contract is only valid for X amount of time. There's no contract in place. And I can't remember all the things I listed out, but they ended up paying me because they actually still owed me like $1,500.
No way.
Yeah.
So you turned that around.
So I completely turned it around.
Holy shit. Checkmate.
Checkmate, indeed. But it was just one of those things where I was like, I never want another person, guy or girl, to be put in that position again, because I feel like it was a very ugly position to be in as a broke college student getting served $100,000 lawsuit. And in reality, they just wanted to force me to work with a company. And I think it was because when they sold the company, they were like, we have this influencer that's attached to it.
It's part of the package. Yeah. Wow.
But as an influencer, it's like, whether the products are good or not, it's like, that's one part of it. It's like, you have to align with the owner and like your teammates. It's like, who are your teammates? Who's the owner? What do they like? It's really like a package deal.
Yeah, especially nowadays with the blend of social media and the brand and the business, for sure. And then in terms of transitioning out of that, in terms of other sponsors, I know I've heard a couple interviews where you said, and if you feel comfortable sharing, if not, no problem. Yeah. But at that time, you start making close to $10,000, $20,000 a month, or how did that sort of start building for you at that time with sponsors?
Oh gosh, well, after that situation ended, I waited a little while before I started anyone. I think because I had like a little bit of PTSD from that. I was like, man, that was intense to go through. So I waited and I really interviewed people. There's a few companies I worked with, I would say all around the same time, because very in-depth interviews. So Lift Fit was one of my very first sponsorships. And I remember I was out in LA for a photo shoot and Randall took me to dinner one-on-one and explained everything. I really got to know him as a person, which is important for me because I was like, all right, your clothing is fantastic. I love it. But I wanted to know who he was as a person and who his team was, who were the teammates. And he answered all my questions. And I still spent some time thinking about it before I said yes. Same thing with the supplement company that I work with right now. I've been working with them for 7 years.
Wow.
A long time. And I mean, I've been poached by a few other companies, but I love the products. I love the owner. I love the team. And it's really hard to find all of that in one. And so, yeah, and I'm still really good friends with Randall and friends and very close to the supplement sponsor that I work with right now.
Very cool. And then once this starts happening, are you tripping that you're starting to make money doing this and start thinking about building a bigger business? Or how do you go from going, like I want to turn this into something more? Like, take me through your mindset at that time with thinking about what's sort of the next steps.
I think the first way that I started making money was online coaching. So I had a lot of requests to do online coaching. And so when I opened that up, I would, take a certain amount of clients and I would close it down, take a certain amount of clients, close it down. And that was when I was like, oh, wow, this is a lot of money coming in. And I would.
What was the first amount that like blew your mind?
Oh, I think was it the first month? I think was like 7,000. And I was like, wow, this is more money than I'm making all 4 jobs combined. And then I think the next month it was like, I don't know, 20,000 or something. It was a lot. It was growing very quickly. And I remember at one point I'm like, is this legal? Am I allowed to be doing this? And so I like really heavily looked into it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna need to find like a tax guy. And it was like very overwhelming because it kind of just, not that it came out of nowhere, but it was shocking to me. And I feel like it was in that moment, I was like, all right, I have a lot of growing up to do. I was like, I need to get everything together. I need to get very organized with like finances, and I need help.
Were you naturally organized with finances before that or not really?
Not that I was organized with finances, but I guess coming from a family that doesn't come from, like money, I feel like I've always had this sense of like needing to save my money and like put it away. And that's kind of what I did for a while, because I was making a lot of money doing online coaching. And then the sponsorships on top of that, I think I signed with 3 at the same time. I think with all the salaries combined, it was like $10,000 a month. And then it was commission, and commission's where you make most of your money too. So between online coaching and doing all the sponsorships and then doing YouTube, which you make money from,
AdSense,
it was a lot, like all coming in at the same time. And I was like, oh my God, it was a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I had to get as organized as I could, as quickly as I could.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of hit all at the same time. But yeah, I didn't really have anyone to turn to when it came to business.
And it wasn't even part of the dream originally, right? Like growing up, did you aspire to build a multi-million-dollar business, being a multimillionaire? Was that part of what was on your radar or not really? It just kind of happened in flow of doing things you were passionate about.
Absolutely not. I don't think that I never really had a goal to be a multimillionaire. That was never the goal in my, growing up and everything. Especially I was like, oh, I want to be an archaeologist, Egyptologist. I want to be a doctor. But even being a doctor, it wasn't for the money at all. I'm very creative. I'm a very creative person in general. And the thought of helping people and being creative is what inspired me to be a doctor. I was like, it had nothing to do with money. I was like, I don't care if I don't make any money being a doctor. It's just the thought of the creativity of healing people. It's like you have to be so creative as a doctor. If you're like, oh, you're just healing people. It's like, no. Doctors have to be so creative about the way they're doing surgeries or the way they're going to go about healing someone and finding the root cause. And also, I just love people in general. I love being able to figure out what the problem is and how to not fix them, but
understand what's underneath it, work through it. Yeah.
Finding the root cause, whether it's physical or emotional.
I love that. And then how does this sort of start to transition where the wheels start spinning in your head and you go, maybe I should start my own kind of clothing brand? Like, what was the process where you go, maybe I should do this? Because, I know you had a bunch of sponsors and I'm sure it was in your mind for a while, but what was the process from taking it to, a dream to actually making that vision a reality with the Buff Bunny collection?
Good question. So let's see. I was doing sponsorships for a while and I loved it. I got to tour the world. I remember LipFit took us on a world tour. And I was like, this is amazing.
Shout out Randall again.
Shout out Randall again, man. It was so much fun. And like,
Yeah.
those are some of my best memories, is like going all over the world and just like with a team and going to all these different crazy countries that I never thought that I would be able to see, you know, especially coming from like small town girl, homeschooled, socially awkward. And then fast forward, like traveling the world with this team and being able to meet people from all over the world is just mind blowing to me. So I love Lift Fit. I mean, I live and breathe it. I'm wearing top threads right now. But I think after a while, I wanted to wear super bright, vibrant colors because that's just my vibe. Like, I love a good black and white moment. And I feel like with Lift Fit, it was a lot of t-shirts. And although they have color now, I'm like, dang, Randall, where was that when I was there, man? But I was like, man, I want to wear like hot pink and like mint colors. I wanted more vibrancy in my outfits. And with creating the collection, I think it was more so I made some t-shirts in the beginning. I was like, okay, with coral colors, you know, bright, fun colors, and mint. So it was more so just creating merch in the beginning. And I remember Randall was one of the first people I called as out of respect. I was like, although it's just merch, I called him. I was like, hey, Randall. I was like, I want to start doing some t-shirts, like buffering t-shirts. And I remember his first thing was like, you should have done this a while ago. And I was like, oh, okay, you're not mad? He's like, absolutely not. Do it. I was like, okay, cool. So I did the t-shirts, the tank tops, they did a water bottle, and they did exceptionally well. I remember
Sold out like right away.
Sold out right away. And I was like, oh, again, I was like, I did not prepare for this. So I think I called all my friends over to come help me pack all these orders. And I think it took us like a solid week or two to get all these orders out.
Wow. And this is all from your organic Instagram, social media, or YouTube.
Yeah. On Instagram and post on my YouTube. I was like, hey guys, I'm doing some t-shirts, and they loved them. And they were like, please do joggers, please do leggings. And I'm, you know me, I'm competitive. I'm
Yeah.
I was like,
Let's do this.
Let's do this. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. Because I don't half-ass anything. And I was like, if I'm going to create them a legging, I'm going to make the best damn legging I can. So I sourced manufacturers from all over the world, and
you had no experience doing this whatsoever when you started.
Got it all.
So just imperfect action, just winging your way through. How important is that? And I want to hear the rest of the story, but for men and women watching, listening to this, how important is it for people who have a dream or vision to take imperfect action without knowing all the steps?
I love that, imperfect action. I think that's a very valuable thing to tell people, is taking that imperfect action. Because a lot of times we wait for the perfect moment, or we wait for the perfect plan, and we want everything to be this like straight line, when in reality it's like, create the best damn product you can and then just launch it. It doesn't have to be a perfect plan. It's just get it out there. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of slip up, is they're like, it's not perfect, well, I have to wait, I need another week or two. And I'm like, just do it. You know, and that's my favorite thing, which is just hit send.
Commit
just
first.
hit enter, just hit upload.
Publish.
That's all you got to do. And you can figure it out along the way, as long as you can produce a great product and give customers, you know, the best experience that you can, that you're able to at that time. Everything else will be figured out along the way.
Yeah, on a long enough time horizon. Yeah, commit first, figure out the rest later.
Yes.
So you start figuring out how to source materials. You just start going to manufacturers, like literally no clue what you're doing, just little by little learning along the way.
Yeah.
And then how long is it from when you start doing that till you actually launch the joggers and the full collection?
Oh gosh, let's see. I think I had launched the merch, I want to say like January. And it was around that time, like I had already started looking into it. And then I think the first legging drop was in August.
How'd it do?
Oh, it did phenomenal. That was like crazy. That was like a big launch at that point. I was like, that took me a little bit longer to pack those orders. I was like, okay. And it's great because even my assistant now, she brought in a pair that I had launched around that time. She's like, they still look brand new. And I was like, well, yeah, because I don't half-ass. Like, if I'm going to create a product, I'm going to create the best thing I can. And I want, you know, I don't want people to get something that just fall apart. You know, and that's what I would see with some influencers. No shade. I would see them come out with like leggings or merch and things like that. And I was like, those don't look good. Those aren't flattering. Like, no.
So you were like paying attention to the details that other people weren't, especially for women, because you had a you had like a pulse on it because you were in it. You had the experience of being on the other side of being somebody who uses the product. You had the creative touch. So you were probably focusing on things that most people weren't. And I know also too, a big thing when we told some people that you were going to be on the show, they said that what they love the most about the Buff Bunny collection is the quality of the materials. Like you don't use cheaper materials like a lot of people might to monetize their audiences or whatever. Like you actually sourced the best materials that you could find at the time.
Yes.
So like what I guess like what advice would you have for people who are on the precipice of like starting their own thing or launching their own thing, but intimidated by taking these sorts of actions, being on this side of the fence, knowing what you know now? What advice would you give to the younger Heidi who is maybe a little intimidated to start taking these steps, for people watching who might want to start their own thing?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think for a second.
Yeah, you need a sip of the Diet Coke before you answer that one.
That caffeine magic, you know.
Yep.
Let's see. Young Heidi. I would say, you know, back then, it's like I did launch with an imperfect plan, and I don't regret that at all. I would say I could have scaled bigger. I would say there's a couple orders that I made where I knew I could have gone a little bigger. I could have been a little braver, but I didn't. And I think it was not imposter syndrome, but I could have scaled my company back in the day much more if I would have been a little bit more brave. Because although I was placing larger orders, I could have placed a little bit bigger.
Yeah. You could have pushed the envelope a little more.
Yeah, I could have pushed the envelope a little bit more. Now, I don't necessarily regret that because I feel like, again, with each launch, I learned so much about the customers and things like that. But at the same time, I feel like I could have grown a lot faster in the first 2 years for sure.
And then can you like give a little context to the audience to date how many pairs of, individual items you guys have moved or products you guys have moved, or the volume of sales and whatever level of specificity or vagueness you feel comfortable, of course. But just to give the audience context of how you took this dream and the scale of how much you brought it to reality.
Definitely. So I never get too in-depth with numbers, but let's see. I would say the very first batch of shirts I think I ordered was like 300, I think, like 300 shirts. And I was like, ooh, these will last me 2 months. So the very first, like, I would say 2 launches, I was like, this will take a while. So I wasn't expecting things to sell out as fast. And then as I was placing larger and larger orders, like they were still selling out. But again, I could have placed larger orders. That's it's like that one thing where you're like, should I have, done 10x what I was doing, or me playing it safe back then was just like 3 to 4x.
Yeah.
Ordering 3 to 4x, I'm like, okay, if 300 is selling out, I'm gonna order 4 times more, this times more. Now it's like with each collection we launch, it's somewhere in like the 6 figures. It kind of depends on like the size of the collection and whatnot.
Yeah.
So going from like 350 shirts to like over 100,000, leggings it's a big step. And we do a lot of launches per year.
I know you got one coming up next week.
Yes,
right? Yes.
Do.
See, I do my homework.
Saturday, our Dream House collection, which I'm pretty excited for.
Yes.
And with our collections, like, we make it fun. We try to just make it fun for women, because I think that's another thing, in the gym space. It's like, we walk in to the gym and it can be very intimidating. And I love me a black and white moment, more in black and white today. But there's also something really empowering about wearing hot pink and throwing those weights around. Something about it.
Yeah.
So I just try to make the collections a good mixture of things, where I'll have the neutrals for the girls that love the neutrals, and I love bringing these like bold, vibrant, loud pieces to life for women to just wear their personality in the gym.
Yeah. And I love too that you guys, and we were talking about this off camera before we started, you guys have like the extra small all the way up to like 3XL. So you guys serve women across the spectrum, whereas a lot of other brands might not have that wide array of a selection. Was that something that like you got demand for, or just connecting with your community? Like, what inspired that choice? And then also, as a follow-up question to that, I know that your brand, I did my homework. I know your brand is dominantly like women, and you're big on like women entrepreneurs and supporting the community. And you just recently had your first male hire, I believe.
Yes.
So I did
You
my
really
homework.
have done your homework.
Did my homework.
I saw your list of questions like, wow, these are in depth. You probably did more homework on this than I've ever had for a podcast. I was like, this is great.
I love it.
Let's see. Okay, so the size range was definitely very important to me in the beginning. And this is something where, you know, some people are like, oh, if a brand doesn't start off at offering all these sizes, they don't care. When in reality, when I first started, I think I started extra small through extra large. And did I want more sizes? Absolutely. But a few things. The more sizes you order, the more expensive it is because you have your MOQs, which is your minimum order quantity. So they might say, you need to order, I think back in the day, they were like, you need to order at least 50 units per size. So you're like, okay, well, that's quite a big expense when you're working on a budget, you know? So when companies first start off releasing small, medium, large, I totally understand. I'm like, I get you, girl. I'm not upset that I can't wear your brand. Like, I know eventually they will make that money back and use that profit in order to add the sizes if they care to. Now, I will say, having that extra small through 3XL, and maybe eventually we'll expand.
Stay tuned.
You know, stay tuned.
Yes.
For me, it was important because my family, you know, my family is very, you know, they vary from different sizes. You know, my little sister was an extra small at one point, and then I had another sister that was a double XL. And so for me, it's like, I want my family to be able to wear these pieces, you know, and it being a diverse collection as well, it's always been very important to me since the very, very beginning, because I come from a family that we're a big mixture of all different things, you know. It's like we're white, we have Black family members, we have Athabascan, we have Navajo. It's like we're a mixture of a little bit of everything. So it's like I want to be able to see my family in those pieces, whether what size, or I want to make them feel represented when they see the collection.
Yeah, so hit close to home. That's beautiful. And then with the women entrepreneurship that you support, and I know a lot of your team is women-based, why are you so passionate about that, and what sort of inspired that for you?
Oh, gosh, I would say a few reasons. Honestly, like, I would love to hire more men. It's just
They're just not as good.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was like, men are very, you know, they're very creative and they're very good. Men and women are both great. But for some reason, we don't really have a whole lot of men apply at Buff Bunny Collection. I don't know if it's the name or what.
Well, what's pretty cool about it too is you're probably hiring a lot of people who are fans of the product. Exactly. So you're not just you know, when people probably work for you, I'm sure you've seen it where, you know, I know I've seen it too, where some of the best people that work for us are people that consume the product first, and they love it so much that they want to be a part of it, as opposed to someone who just saw like an ad and was like, yeah, sure, I need a job, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like an inspired team part of it.
Yes, I will say that we've had the best luck with hiring whenever we post on our social media and we're like, hey, we're looking for a creative director or whatever we're looking for. We'll put ads like on Indeed and, you know, LinkedIn and things like that. But we have found some of the best people from just posting on social media and say, hey, we're looking for this position, because they are usually very in tune with the brand and they're very passionate.
Yeah.
And I mean, we do have a very lengthy interview process though, for sure. Just to make sure that, you know, whenever we hire someone, we're like, man, like, we're a close-knit team, and we want to make sure that we're hiring the perfect person for that position. So
it's on brand and A players. Yeah.
Yes,
100%.
definitely.
And then of course people wrote in when we said we're interviewing, we have to ask, how did you and Christian meet? I know you guys have talked about it many a time, but we want to hear the full story. How did you and Christian meet? And can you just, you know, share a little bit about that story for the audience?
Yeah, definitely. So we met way back in the day through some mutual friends. And I think years went by. I hadn't seen him in like 2 years, I want to say.
And at the time, you didn't know who Christian Guzman, the fitness guy, was? Like, you had no context of who he was before you met him, or you did a little?
Let's see. I think he was just like, when I first met him, he was like 20, and like, he wasn't really like big on social media or anything, like, at all. But I didn't really watch his stuff either, just because it was like a guy on YouTube. No offense, babes. So I didn't
Sorry,
really,
Christian.
yeah, sorry, Christian. So yeah, I didn't really watch him or anything, but so I met him like twice, and then like 2 years went by, and I hadn't seen him since. And funny enough, I was in another country. I was at, gosh, the UK show. Which one is that? Oh my gosh, the UK Fitness Expo, Body Power. So I see him at the gym, and he comes up to me, and he's like, Heidi, and I didn't recognize him because it's been a long time since I've seen him, and he was like a little boy when I saw him, and I was like, Christian? I was like, Christian? And I was like, didn't recognize him. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, wow, great to see you. It's been a long time. Hope all's well. And that was kind of it. And then...
Was he trying to like flirt a little bit, or was he trying?
No. I mean, I was in a previous relationship at the time. So, I mean, it was just kind of like, hey, it's been a few years. Good to see you. I was like, hey, you too. And I was actually...
checking in. He was just checking
Yeah, exactly. And then he asked me to do a YouTube collab. It was like a while later, and I was like, okay. I was like, I hadn't really done collabs either. I think he was like one of the first for sure. I think one of the first 3 that I've ever done. And so I was like, okay, great. Like, what are we doing for this YouTube collab? He's like, oh, we'll just like work out. All right, cool. So there's like a big group of us that went to the gym, Barbell Brigade. Love that gym. Shout out to Barbell Brigade. And so we just did a workout. If anything, we were just like very awkward. Like I was like, like it's funny watching the video now. We were actually watching it the other day. I was like, oh my gosh. He's like, I had a crush on you. I was like, I did not have a crush on you. Like not in a mean way, but I was just trying to get my shoulder workout in, you know?
Yeah.
And then, gosh, what happened? Then I think quite a bit of time went by. And he heard that I was single through some mutual friends. Like I hadn't even put on the internet yet. Like it was pretty low key. It was just like friends and family knew. Friends and family had went and told Christian like, oh yeah, like just mentioned it. And he was like, really? And he was single at the time too.
Yeah.
So then he tried, I think he had asked me to be an athlete.
So first it was the collab.
When I was with Live Fit too, there's some tea, Randall.
Oh, snaps. 3 exclusives here.
Yes, he had asked me, he's like, hey, I was wondering if you'd be interested. And he was very respectful. He's like, I don't know where you stand with Live Fit, but I was wondering if you'd be interested in an athlete. And I was like, thank you so much. It's very kind, but no, I'm good. And he was like, I don't think
So this guy was trying.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm okay, thank you.
Yeah.
No. And then, gosh, he would just text me here and there, be like, hey, if you ever need to use my videographer. I was like, I'm okay, thanks. And I would just kind of like I would acknowledge, like, thank you so much, but like, period.
So this guy was trying. This guy was elegantly.
He says he was planting seeds, whatever that means. And but I was just very much like, no.
Yeah. You were cutting weeds.
I was cutting weeds. He was planting seeds. I was cutting weeds.
Yes.
And then what got me was when he was like, hey, I was wondering where you manufacture out of. And I was like, there's a few different countries, like Turkey, China, Vietnam, or there's a few places, right? And then he was like, oh, I was wondering, do you do like custom Pantones? Are you doing like stock colors? So we start chatting back and forth. And then I think like 2 hours worth of going back and forth. And he was like, hey, I enjoyed our chat. I'm going to head to bed. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm like, talk to me tomorrow? Like, what do you mean? Like, we're done. We're like, this conversation is done. We're done talking business. But then sure enough, the next day he's like, good morning. I'm like, what are you doing?
So he's like trying the angles. Yeah.
He tried a few different things, but where he got me was business, because he could tell. I think he kind of knew that was like what I was passionate about. And I really wasn't interested in dating at the time. I was like, my heart is closed off right now. I am not interested. I'm going to focus on me. And I think I had told my team, because I had started my business at this point, and I had a few employees, and they were like, ooh, you're single. Like, who are you going to date? Like, are you going to start dating? I was like, nobody. And when I do, I want a normal person, normal job, possibly an accountant that works like 8 to 5. Like, that'd be cool.
No social media.
No social media, absolutely not. Like, no fitness guys, nothing.
And you end up with like the alpha land, alpha lady,
yeah.
YouTube
Then that
guy.
happens. And then I remember I was like, yeah, so I'm dating someone. And they were like, an accountant? I was like, no. Complete opposite of what I told you guys.
Yes.
I was like, this is Christian.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what happens? He asks you on a date, or
So
we want the exclusive
the
tea,
exclusive tea.
details.
Okay, so let's see, we were going on a trip to New York. There was like a YouTuber event, right? And so we were both going, and he was like, "Why don't you stay an extra day after the event, and I'll take you on a date?" And I was like, "All right." And I was like, "It's one date. What's that gonna hurt? That doesn't mean that anything's gonna happen from it." And my assistant's like, "Okay." So he planned like this whole day for our date. So I think, let's see, he picked me up, and we went and got food, got a helicopter, like look all over New York City. Then we went and caught coffee.
So this guy went all out, coordinating the whole
out.
day.
I mean, a whole day. And I was like, and I think for me, it was the effort he had put in. There was so much effort that he had put in for this entire day. And I think that definitely stood out to me. And then talking business with someone else was amazing. I loved, and honestly, probably half the date we talked about business too. I'm not gonna lie. But I think we really enjoyed it because we had a lot of similar interests in things, but from one entrepreneur to the other, it's really nice to have that.
Yeah.
Just be able to openly talk
and
about your
catch.
ideas and what you want to do and where you want to grow and things like that. So
Especially that you guys are sort of in the same industry, you can pitch and catch materials, ideas, marketing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and that is a unique thing. I would say, you know, as an entrepreneur, dating another entrepreneur is great. It's like you understand the hustle, like you get each other.
You
But
understand the late nights, early morning. Yeah.
yes,
There's the pros
definitely.
and cons of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And it just so happens that me and Christian are very similar business, you know, because he'll be like, "Oh, did you like that manufacturer? Like, hey, how'd that color do for you?" Or like, did your girls really like those flares that you came out with? Should I change anything about mine? Like, is there any tips? Or the same thing for me. I'll be like, "Hey, did those sell well? Like, 6-inch shorts are doing real well. Are those doing real well for you?" It's like, like what percentage? So it's really helpful
Yeah.
to kind of pick each other's brains when we can, for sure.
That's awesome. And then how many years have you guys been together now? I'm sure he knows.
He probably knows. 4, 5, 6, 6.5.
Wow. Yeah, and I know a lot of people on social media.
yeah.
I know a lot of people on social media look up to your guys' relationships. A lot of the cool, funny videos you guys share, but you guys also share a lot of like really meaningful stuff, advice to others. What advice do you have for people who are watching this who maybe look up to your guys' relationship? Obviously, it's not perfect. Nobody is, right? There's give and take. There's learning. But what advice do you have for people out there who look at you and Christian's relationship and are like, Heidi, what's your best advice?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, I'm going to say no relationship is perfect. And I think it's so sweet when people are like, "Oh, couple goals." I'm like, we're just a couple, like, and there's no such thing as a perfect relationship. I mean, gosh, me and Christian are just like every other couple. Like, we bicker, we fight, we argue, we get annoyed at each other. We love the hell out of each other, but like it's like all the normal couple things. I would say if you're dating someone that is an entrepreneur, like, definitely being very patient with them. I mean, they have a lot on their shoulders. It's hard, and just being there for one another is huge. And I think the biggest thing is being understanding, and that's something that I think in previous relationships compared to dating Christian, it's like other relationships, they just didn't understand the hustle, if you know what I mean. Like,
Sure.
they're like, "Oh, like we could be out with friends right now. We could be doing this. We're missing out on so many things." Whereas dating Christian, he's like, "Oh, you're already done working for the day?" I'm like, No, I'm not. Go work on something else. It's like, it's a healthy competitive vibe where it's like you have your time or just toss your phone, go on vacation for a month. We love the Caymans. But then other times it's like, okay, this is a time to grind and this is a time to focus. And that is something really unique about our relationship that I love, is that we understand, like, if he's having a day and he's really stressed out, I'm like I'll ask him a little bit about it. I'm like, "Oh yeah, that sucks. I'm just gonna let you figure that out
I'm gonna give him some
on your
space,
own." Yeah. And it's like, even though I'm an entrepreneur, and can we go to each other with things? Absolutely. But when it comes to actually figuring that out, it's like sometimes both of us, it's like we need space to kind of think things through, because at the end of the day, like, I'm not a part of his brand and he's not a part of mine. It's like I'm in the weeds with my company and he's in the weeds with his, and we can give each other advice here and there, but really it's like I need to figure it out. Like I need space away to kind of like figure out how I'm gonna handle this like situation or fire. And same with him.
What's the biggest piece of advice, or I guess life lesson you've learned from Christian? He's gonna love this one.
Oh, that's a. Wait, sorry, ask me that again.
Yeah, what's the biggest piece of advice or biggest life lesson you've learned from dating Christian, either in life or business? Whether by example or by wisdom off top, like what's been one of the most profound things you've learned dating him?
I think that he really helped me get thicker skin in a good way.
Yeah.
I think when we first started dating, it was a lot because we were both in previous relationships, and neither one of us were single for very long. I think we started dating each other like 6 weeks afterwards, and it was a lot. You know, the internet, started making up all these rumors, and it was a lot. I think more so on me than him. He was like, I don't care. And I was like, okay, because I guess I've never had a lot of negativity in my life. And so, not that he brought a lot of negativity in my life, but at the same time, I was like, this is a lot. Like, dating you is a lot. And I think at one point he thought I was going to break up with him. He's like, because I was like, hey, can we talk? And he's like, man, I really thought you were going to break up with me. And I was just like, how do you navigate through all this? Because for me, my YouTube and Instagram was more, it was educational, but I would share personal life things here and there. But I wouldn't open up as much as he would in his. So I feel like my people loved my social media, but like his people were deeply connected because he would share even more personal things than I
very
would.
vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when all that happened, actually Randall was very kind. I remember he called me one time and I was like, oh man, he's gonna kick me off of LiftFit because I'm dating someone new or something. And he was like, yeah. And I remember like, I don't even think I ever told him that, but like he called me and he was just like, hey, I just want to make sure you're okay. And I was like, like I wasn't like I was like holding back the tears. I was like, I'm fine. Everything's burning around me. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
But I just really appreciate he just like called to check on my mental health. I thought that was really cool. And I think during that time, Christian was just very much like, you know what? Who cares what other people think? Like, are you happy? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I'm happy. And he's like, we just have to weather the storm, and like eventually the sun will come out. The sun took a little while to come out, but it eventually did come out.
Yeah.
And I think for me, he was just like, you just can't care what people are going to think. Is it going to matter in a couple of years? I'm like, no. And he's like, then who cares?
Yeah.
And he really helped me just navigate with like having thicker skin. And it's not like I cared heavily what people thought about, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like in the past I was a people pleaser.
And especially when so much of your brand or business is predicated on like serving your audience, and you appreciate the comments, and you're getting hundreds of comments and hundreds of thousands of likes, and you have millions of followers, and I'm sure you can relate, I know I can, where you could get 100 positive comments, but in the beginning you get 3 mean ones, and like you remember those 3 mean ones more than the 100 positive ones or whatever. I'm curious, how did you guys navigate early on, things like, maybe jealousy or like the attention, because I'm sure you get a lot of attention on social media. I know Christian gets a lot of attention on social media. Was that ever something that you guys sort of navigated or learned advice from you could share with others, or was it pretty fluid because you guys are kind of both in the same position, so there was a mutual understanding?
Like guys coming up to me or girls going up to him?
Yeah. Was that ever an issue, especially that you guys have such large followings? I'm sure it comes up.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I'm like, no relationship is perfect. There's been times where I think we've both been like, and it's a
like,
sense of
that?
like, it's not like we're like, who dat? But it's more so like, as long as you are respectful and you have boundaries. I'm a big like boundaries person. It's like my favorite word. It's like having respect and boundaries for your significant other is huge. And it's like, especially in the social media influencer world, it's like,
it's easy to blur lines a little
bit. It's easy to blur lines where, and not in the sense of like, oh, is this appropriate or not? It's more so like, what makes, Christian most comfortable, or what am I comfortable with? And making sure that it's like you're knowing what each other's boundaries are and what y'all are comfortable with, because obviously like social media, you know, there's all types of, there's like photo shoots or like, okay, I'm gonna do this for clickbait. It's like making sure that you communicate and that you have healthy boundaries and making sure that you respect you and your partner's boundaries overall.
And communicating it up front, so there's context.
Communicating up front and like being the first to be like, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, and then making sure it's like, okay, perfect. Like, how can I make this so you're more comfortable in the future, and then things like that. But I mean, honestly, like we're both just so like we know what's appropriate, what isn't, you know?
Yeah.
And so I would say like it rarely happens. And yeah, it's just really just knowing your boundaries.
Yeah, especially after 6 years, you probably figured them out.
Especially after 6.5 years.
I love that. All right, now before we wrap up, we play a quick little game at the end here.
Yeah.
But last question I have for you before we play that game is for people around the world watching, whether men, women, people who are maybe whether they're trying to get in shape or trying to pursue their dreams. A lot of our audience is entrepreneurial based. People in their 20s, 30s, 40s trying to make their dreams a reality. What advice do you have for people who are maybe stuck on the fence of, you know, having dreams and goals and ambitions, but maybe they're stuck from, maybe it's a breakup, maybe it's limited beliefs, maybe, you know, they're in a point, I'm sure you can relate, where you want more, but, you know, you so to speak, your point was buying that one-way ticket, right? And they're maybe looking up to you for advice. What advice would you give people who are on the fence about living that dream to go for it, to make it a reality, coming from, you know, being someone who never thought your life would be where it is now and, you know, now living your dream? What advice would you have for people out there?
Ooh, that's a really good, that's a good one.
Loaded
question. Yeah, loaded question for sure.
Yeah.
I would say my biggest piece of advice would be to take action and just to start. And kind of what I was saying earlier is I think a lot of people are stuck on having that perfect plan and needing that perfect journey and having it all figured out, when in reality, I didn't even have my LLC when I first launched Bulk Money Collection. I'm going to be honest. I was like, I was messy, but two things I was very passionate about was creating a very good product and serving people the best that I can. As long as you go in very genuine with like your business and whatever goal you're trying to do, whether it's chasing a new business or maybe you're trying to get a new promotion at work or whatever you're trying to do, it's like, you know, just taking action and not being afraid to hit send or upload or take action, go talk to your boss if you want that promotion. Be like, what's a conversation going to do? You know, it's the worst that they can say is no, and that's okay. Or if it's, you know, starting a YouTube channel, it's like, start on your iPhone, you know, just put the video together and hit upload, see what happens, you know. And with starting a business, it's just taking that leap of faith and not having a perfect plan and just taking that little bit of action, even if it's a small action. It doesn't have to be some big grand action gesture, if you will. It's just taking a little baby step.
And feel the fear and do it anyways. Yeah.
Feel the fear. And honestly, like I'm 7 years into having a business and I still get nervous. I still get butterflies. I'm like, I was like, should I be ordering this many units? Yeah, why not? Go for it. And it's really just like gambling. I feel like as an entrepreneur, it's like you're a professional gambler.
Yeah. And there's new levels, new devils for everyone. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not that like you have it fully figured out. You're learning at new levels, but unless you learn level 1, you'll never get to level 2, level 3, etc. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Profound. All right. So now we wrap up with a quick little game. The way the game works is called First Things First.
Okay.
So the way the game works is I'm just going to rifle off a quick word or phrase, and you just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a word relation game, so to speak.
Ooh, all right.
Make sense? The only rule is that you can't repeat yourself twice.
Done.
Done?
All right.
Cool. So I'm gonna rifle off one word. You tell me the first word or phrase
Okay.
that comes to mind. All right. So first one is the Buff Bunny collection.
Confidence.
The biggest limiting belief you had to overcome to live your dreams.
People pleasing.
Christian Guzman.
Handsome.
Worst piece of advice you've ever gotten.
Ooh, worst piece of advice. Be realistic.
Best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
What's the worst that could happen?
Mm. The Heidi that was 40 pounds overweight eating Sonics and boba.
Sad.
Making your first $1 million.
It's a good question. Oh. Exciting.
That's a good one. The biggest misconception you think most people who follow you or learn about you have about you?
I think that people, oh, that's a tough one. I know. I think people think that my life is perfect and that I'm very lucky and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you know, what I'm uploading on YouTube and Instagram is a highlight reel. And I really try to, oh, sorry, I'm going deep into it. Okay.
No. It's okay. Keep going. Keep going.
I was going to say.
We got the tea here.
Yeah, we got the tea here. I would say.
Diet Coke came in handy.
I know, man. I was like, never feel hype on my way back. But I think people tend to look at social media influencers and some people don't watch all my videos and see all my posts, but they see a lot of happiness and they see a lot of achievements and they see, oh, she's so happy in a relationship. She has this great business and she has a great family and friends and this and that. And in reality, it's like, I am just like everyone else. I've gone through some really difficult times, really dark times. And some things I share on social media and some things it's just too personable or maybe it's too hurtful to share. And it's not that I'm trying to hide it from social media or anything, but I'm like, no, I've been through some shit. It's just I don't always put it out there for a few reasons. Maybe sometimes I'm still healing from it, or in other aspects, it's sometimes it's really hard to put the most vulnerable parts of you on social media because people can use it against you
later. Yeah.
And it's like, although you have a million nice comments, but something that is so deep within you that maybe you're still healing from or you haven't quite healed, it's for people to know that about you, and to get one of those comments could just throw you off. So I would say that people think that sometimes my life is perfect, but it's a little bit of a shit show at times.
You're human.
We love a shit show.
And then second to last question is the biggest insecurity you've had to overcome in your life that you're comfortable sharing, of course.
Yeah. Biggest insecurity.
Insecurity or challenge, just something that
I would say people pleasing in the past. I think in the past, even during first parts of social media, I was like, I just want to make people happy, because I love helping people, and I'm like, what can I want to upload things like for people, and then over time it's like, okay, I'm still doing that, but I'm also uploading for me. I'm doing things that I really enjoy, and I'm just living my life a little bit more for me now, for sure. I mean, I always have, but I think just less people pleasing and more like, I'm just gonna do my thing.
Yeah. And then the last one, you ready? A little dramatic, but from an honest place.
Drama.
When you're dead, gone, nothing but a pile of dust, what do you hope that the Heidi Somers legacy, your life was about, that you meant to people while on this planet?
That's a really good question.
We had to go deep for the last one.
I would say my overarching thing, whether it's Buff Bunny Collection or my friendships, relationships, new businesses that I'm working on, I think the biggest thing is I love seeing women as well as men. I love seeing women realize how amazing they are. There's something about it when they get this glow on them where they realize I can leave that toxic relationship. I can start that business. I can raise my child on my own, whatever it is. I love seeing them come into their own power and do their thing. So whether, I'm a part of their fitness journey, and while they're, losing weight or gaining muscle, whatever they're trying to do, or maybe I'm part of their entrepreneurial journey, maybe I inspire them to start their own business or get a promotion at work or whatever they're trying to do. I just hope that I inspired a few people to get to that next level.
I love that. Heidi, thank you so much for coming on the show. Guys,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This was an inspiring episode. As always, guys, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and make sure to give Heidi a follow if you don't already at Buff Bunny. We'll put the links in the description below. Until next time, live strong, live with passion, and for women out there watching, make sure to click the link below and grab your Buff Bunny collection. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.